me to sort of give you a bit of a basic idea of what we're looking for first?
Sure.
Okay, well, I spoke to Mr. Chip about it briefly, but we've done it before in the past on Macbeth, and I think that's a really good text to use again. The idea is like revision for Year 11s. They should know the plot pretty well by now, but they probably need some reminders about the basic, the main events. I think the focus for us that would be really useful would be focus on key speeches and looking at characters' motivations at those points and their feelings, their thoughts, what's led them to that point of that speech. And if possible, a bit of like close analysis of some of the language in that speech. And so maybe a bit of chance for pause and questioning. But really I think theme, character analysis, motivation, and a close look at key speeches, I think is what I would like to get from it. Yeah.
You know, when you were talking about pause and questioning, how much audience participation are you wanting within these?
I think quite a bit, really.
Okay.
Feel free to go run with performance in say a big chunk, and then one speech or one scene, or maybe an interaction between Macbeth and Lady Macbeth, and then a time to pause and let the Year 11s. Or you prompt. I think you know what they're like. They're going to be quite sort of reluctant to ask questions, maybe. So prompt them, maybe.
We're doing it with Year 11s.
Year 11s, yes.
And will it be the whole year group at the same time?
No, we're still thinking about logistics, but myself and Mr. Chip talked about splitting them up maybe into ability groups as well. So there's potential to sort of make it simpler or more complex. Now if that's too difficult, we just have one production and they all see it, and the questioning itself will lead to different levels of ability, I guess. But I think we've talked about splitting the year group into 4. So if we do it 4 times, you're talking then more like 50 at a time rather than your sort of 200. Yeah.
I'm guessing it's within time constraints of a lesson.
Yeah, so it'd be we've got Year 11 English all at the same time on a Monday period 1 and a Thursday period 1. So those would be ideal. I don't know how that fits in for you guys and timings of when you can perform. I've got an hour potentially each time though. I think within a lesson would be good. That's a nice sort of time, isn't it? Time frame. So yeah, a mixture of performance, Q&A, maybe sort of hot seating characters, voiceovers of what the characters' thoughts are, exploring maybe different layers of interpretation, because I know Lady Macbeth, for example, easy to just vilify, she's a manipulative one, she encourages him to murder, but why? What's happened to her? There's this idea that she's lost a child, she's no power as a woman at that time anyway. To look at gender roles, bring in context without it being obvious, yeah.
And for characters like Lady Macbeth, would you want to see kind of a character development of kind of her as kind of very strong initiative and kind of weak kind of?
Yeah, that sounds really good. I think that's really important to sort of trace their decline, because the fact that it's a tragedy, as you know, comes from the fact that he was so great, they were both so powerful and great and in love and had this amazing relationship and bond at the start, and they clearly do love each other, but by the end that's completely fractured, as his state of mind is, as is the country. So yeah.
Is there anything you don't want us to cover? Just because it might overlay with what you're doing?
Not really, anything. And I think for them to see it visually and to have it performed and to explore characters in front of them and make it real off the page, it's just going to be so beneficial. Yeah.
Will anyone from the resource be seeing it?
We can arrange, if the nature of it was like disturbing or distressing, we can arrange for the students who would, in that case, to be removed.
So if it was, would you want it to be more like friendly towards them as well?
Are you thinking sort of noise and sound and stuff like that?
Yeah, or maybe like explaining things in more depth.
Possibly. See, it depends, because some students in the resource are really high functioning. Obviously like Fionn, I teach, is going to get 8 or 9. So that's not an issue. It's more our nurture group, and if we do bring ability groups, I suppose explanations can be simpler and things like that. Yeah.
Just thinking about the speeches and ability groups, I'm assuming you'd want the Shakespearean language.
Yes.
Or would that be something that you'd want adapting? So
good point. Yeah. So I think that would be a really nice part of it. If we, when I say explore a speech, if there could be that, representation of the scene. And then time to say, okay, maybe a narrator type figure you know, or Macbeth comes out of role or whatever and says, you know, what have we just said
You
here?
almost have the two halves of one person doing the speech in Shakespearean and one person doing it colloquially.
Oh, nice, yeah, to have the this English, modern English interpretation. Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. I mean, key speeches for us, I mean, on the exam, you probably remember yourselves, you get given one speech and you've got to analyse like a theme or a character in that speech and how the language conveys that character or that theme. So, you know, it could be power, it could be ambition. What else has come up in the past? Yes, you might get the Unsex Me Here speech. Exactly, yeah, the Raven himself, his horse, that speech has come up. Or Macbeth's they're often soliloquies. But we've also had Banquo. Last year's question was really difficult because it was all focused on Banquo, who of course leaves, you know, he's dead in Act 2. So any of the major characters really. One thing I've been looking at in my year 10s already is contrast of leadership, like how Malcolm is presented as a very different type of leader to Macbeth. And again, they're both different to Duncan. Duncan's wise and good, but he's not wise, he's good man and he's loyal, but he's naive. Malcolm's wiser and understands that, you know, there can be treachery behind men's smiles. Macbeth is a more attractive leader, you know, he's powerful, he's dominant, he's very active, he's very exciting, he's a great warrior, but obviously he's a tyrant, you know, and selfish because of his ambition, is his fatal flaw. If you could focus somewhere on tragedy, and what makes a play a tragedy, and what is so tragic about our hero. And like you're saying about tracing their decline will be really important for that, I think. Possibly getting in context about the message Shakespeare had for the play, making the students realise that this is a creation of Shakespeare's, it's not a real thing, these are not real people. Shakespeare created it to impress James, and you know. Alex, sorry then.
Do you want us to reference like which act and which scene each section comes from?
Yeah.
So it's like if a certain like soliloquy comes out, like which scene it was in.
That would be really helpful. And if maybe they won't remember the numbers, but if you said this and this comes just after this has happened, that would be great. Put it in the linear. Yeah. No.
You know how you said you wanted to cover everything? Is there any key plot points that you want us to focus on and emphasise to the audience?
I suppose that the Prophecy of the Witches, if I go through it, the first meeting of Macbeth when he gets home, and Lady Macbeth, you know, when goes hence tomorrow, never shall sun. His moment of doubt, and then her manipulation. I suppose those are all key. When she says, you know, have you changed your mind? You know, was the hoe drunk? I would smash my own baby's brains out rather than do. That's quite a dramatic part. I suppose their relationship, if you look at their relationship immediately after the murder, she's the one in control. She's the one at that point who's cold and in control. He's starting to lose it. But then that shifts. We don't see her again, really. So I suppose then it would be the banquet scene, Banquo's ghost. He returns to the witches. Looking at Malcolm and Macduff, I know it's time, isn't it? You know, Malcolm pretends to Macduff, doesn't he, that he'd be a really bad king and that he's full of sin, but he's tricking Macduff to see what Macduff really thinks. Then he reveals, no, actually, I'm none of those things. I'm a really good leader. So, maybe not that, because that's quite in depth, but maybe the bit where Macduff's told about his family being murdered, and Malcolm says, "Take it like a man." Yes, but I must feel it like a man. So you've got gender there, because you can link that to modern day and toxic masculinity and things like that. So gender roles then, expectations for men and women, what Shakespeare's saying through Macduff. And then, I suppose the finale, isn't it? Well, you know, I suppose actually, not about the death scene, I'm more thinking Macbeth's final soliloquy, life's but a walking shadow, when his wife has just killed herself and he feels nothing. So he's, you know, that contrast, maybe some sort of split stage, I don't know what you do with it, but that contrast between the hero and the broken man, you know, and what's happened there, why. I suppose if you mention words like hamartia for a fatal flaw, you know, those key things.
Me and Catherine and Bella, who's at Hastings, we're doing A-level English lit,
Oh, amazing.
So we're
Did
doing
you?
King Lear and Tragic at the moment. But
Of course
just
you
like,
are, yeah.
I was going to say, is there obviously because I didn't do GCSE here,
Yeah,
where's there kind of
the link, the line to draw, you mean, between
also,
A-level and GCSE. Well, I think Fatal Flaw, I mean, Trimartia, yeah, a bit of catharsis, maybe talk about. We don't tend to teach much more. Have you got Mr. Reader?
Yeah.
Will you ask him, just say, because he probably is more likely to bring down literature terms into his GCSE teaching than I am, possibly from I'll bring in language things without realising it from A-level. I'll use the basics that we need, definitely, but he might have a few more that he might, that'd be great input from him, yeah. Hopefully, yeah. Yeah, and if we do use them, translate them, because there'll be some kids who really just won't remember them, yeah.
Are you wanting us to focus on like exam criteria?
I suppose that reference to the fact that in your exam, you're going to need to know. Yeah, and you're going to need to have ideas. They're going to need to understand the characters and have ideas. That's AO1. You're going to need to know some key lines. So we'll be emphasising these key lines to you. So yeah, maybe if you could get a bit humorous with it, couldn't you, I suppose, and do the old, like a CGP revision guide, oh, here's a key quote, everyone remember this one, or pick out, say, 4 or 5 that you want to highlight during the production, I don't know. Everyone remember this one, I don't know, even if they're written as well, something, I don't know, it's leave it up to you guys, but you'll do it much better than me.
What kind of style are you looking for? Like realistic or humour or physical or anything like that? What kind of style are you wanting? For like the soliloquies and stuff like that, are you wanting it to be like a realistic soliloquy?
Well, to answer both questions, so once they've covered big ideas, and that's AO1, the AO2 is sort of analysis of language, so that's where your explanations and things would come in. And the AO3 is context. So in terms of exam criteria, I think the things we're talking about anyway are covering those 3. But to answer yours, Catherine, I think maybe a contrast of style, where maybe like very serious, dramatic, very emotive, because this is really emotive stuff, and I don't think they always get that in lessons, and year 11. It's only when you see it on stage, isn't it, that you really understand the power of these lines. And it's only when I saw the recent production, the RST production that was put in cinemas with Christopher Eccleston, that was the first production I'd seen where I had real sympathy for Lady Macbeth. And I understood for the first time why he does what he does for her, because she's grieving and they've lost this child, and they've lost several children. She's unable to have children. The actress, I can't remember who it was, but she really played on that sympathy, and you could see why he was doing it for her. So like maybe trying to get that emotive. They're old enough to cope with that, but then also maybe a bit switch to humour and a bit of silliness and light-hearted to kind of contrast. Is that right, Alex? Yeah.
Because I remember when we were in GCSE, we did do a lesson about context at the time, so would you want us to kind of explore, maybe not through showing it, but like, when we come out to it, to talk about maybe if we just discuss the context sometimes. So we can talk about why Shakespeare wrote the play, the kind of ideas and notion, and why it was such a shock to see Macbeth in a position of power when at the time, obviously.
Divine Right Kings. Women's roles, I think all those, and his message to James the First, and he was essentially trying to impress James, wasn't he? It's a warning about to king killers, potential king killers, isn't it? Yeah, all those, and the supernatural, the belief, to us it seems slightly ridiculous, 3 witches. However, there's all sorts of things we believe today that people might ridicule us for, and any modern cultural references you want to get in there, lyrics that you think or anything.
Where would you want us to perform it?
Last time we were here, and that worked really well actually. It was kind of an arc of students, a performance space here, but obviously again leave that up to you, but this is a good space, isn't it? And
We had the staging last time as well.
And it feels more drama, than being the whole like an assembly type thing. I think it'd be really good for them. It's a bit more intimate, isn't it? But if we're doing 50 at a time, that's really doable, isn't it? Here?
And when would you want us to perform it?
So we started looking at timelines, and I actually thought, because we might be doing this kind of rotation where we take the weakest and then the rest are left in class, which will mean us doing some kind of, we've just done a boot camp thing, so it'll just be some kind of setted rotation of lessons, and that's going to take time to prep and everything. Would after Easter be doable? And he seemed to think that might fit into your timeline a bit better as well, just after Easter. If that gives you time to prepare and things like that. So maybe maybe not the first week back, but the second week back. A third week, yeah. Fits in. You're still here now. Yeah. But if that puts too much pressure on with exams and things like that,
Have they seen any of the films or videos on production?
yeah, they've all seen, well, different teachers show different ones. So I use Polanski version, a lot of teachers do. There's the more recent one, is it Michael Fassbender in 2015, 2016? Yeah, it shows at the start, doesn't it? Yeah, that film's a little bit off the text, so it's a more difficult one to use. More able can cope with that. But those are the two we use. We might use scenes with the Patrick Stewart version.
Yeah.
I've even used the Judi Dench Lady Macbeth, classic. It's really good. And who was Macbeth against with her?
Ian McKellen.
The guy who's in Lord of the Rings. Ian McKellen, sorry, yeah, that's what it says. Ian McKellen, yeah. So, those ones. I think I can't think of any others we'd use. Yeah, that's fantastic. No, it's really exciting. Thank you. It's a great opportunity for year 11s to see. And did you see it yourselves then? So, Catherine, your year group, did you see it?
No, we
we
had
had
the art
of
one.
the Medusa,
I think we had Macbeth when we were in like year 9 there.
maybe.
Yeah, I think I remember with
You year 10?
In year 10, I think. So I remember seeing two. I remember seeing Macbeth, and I remember seeing
Yeah.
Raptors and Medusa.
Oh,
But I think the
okay.
Raptor Medusa was just.
That was just performance, was it? Yeah, brilliant.
Do you remember that? I remember Rafter and Medusa, not Macbeth.
The Macbeth was in the hall.
Was it?
Wow.
Oh, I think the one I saw in here was the year 11s that have just gone when they were in year 10. That's right. So it was the nature group. Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's brilliant. Was there anything else I can help you with at the moment?
Have a look back on your lists.
And you can always just come and grab it, any of you, an email or this lesson I'm free, so we can keep talking.
Do you want PowerPoints or like tech or anything like that?
If that made quotations easier to flash up.
Maybe if we just have a highlight of the key quotes for each individual paragraph, it's kind of great.
Yeah, appearing behind or what side or whatever. Yeah. And I think style, like you say, is a balanced mixture. Alex?
What would you, with costumes, would you want it to be period style or
That's a really good question.
more modern?
What is it?
NTC tops.
Oh yeah, okay. Just keep it simple. Yeah, that makes sense to me because we don't. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to confuse. I was thinking neutral, something neutral. but I was
Probably
thinking
like a
that.
token costume. So last time we did like Macbeth in 3 minutes or something, and we had like Macbeth in the big leather jacket with the sword, and I think Duncan had like the rugby hat on or something, something weird.
Just to indicate, some kind of symbol for the character there. Yeah, I think they do get confused with, even when they're watching the film, which one's Macbeth, which one's Banquo, so anything that indicates that would, separate them out. I mean, in terms of what they have to do, they have to be able to know the plot, have ideas, be able to interpret the language, look at techniques of the language, how the messages are conveyed, and why messages from the play, why it was written, what led to it, context, life at the time. So I'll leave that with you if that's all right.
Yeah.
Oh, great stuff. No, I'm really excited. That's brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, it's a lot of work. So